Hello, guys. Today we are on another interview session with Mr. David. Like I've already said, our main purpose of showcasing the African community or the foreign community in Czech Republic is to let them tell their story, what they do here, because I know there are some people who are doing remarkable good in their fields of studies, not only study, also in the field of work. We contribute great to the economy of Czech Republic, as well as the social life. So today we are here with Mr. David. I don't know if I should call it the engineer or...
No, I'm not an engineer.
Okay. So Mr. David, he's an expat from Ghana who works here as well as also a doctoral student. I don't know, I would say of repute. So David, welcome.
Thank you.
So Mr. David, please can you tell us a bit about yourself? Where are you from and how long have you lived in Czech?
Okay, so I'm from Cape Coast in Ghana, and most of my life I spent there. I think I only moved away for my bachelor's degree from KNUST, and yeah, so I grew up in Cape Coast, did most of my schooling there, and then I did my bachelor's in KNUST. Then I moved to Europe.
Okay. University, which hall?
Unity.
Okay. Yeah, I had friends who were used to be not only in Katanga. I think the other one was the name of not Unity. Katanga do have some kind of an opposing house that
Conti.
That's
Unity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Unity. Okay, yeah.
It's the same
So,
thing.
okay, good. So, how long have you lived in Czech?
For almost 3 years, I think 2.5 years. Yeah.
I think before that you lived in Italy, I guess.
Yeah. So before I moved here, I lived in Italy, but then after I finished my schooling in Italy, I lived for a bit in Germany and then moved here from Germany.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I see. Then why do you settle in Czech? Because I can see you did a lot of moving, like from Italy to Germany and Germany to Czech.
Yeah. So after my degree in Italy, I was just looking for opportunities for a PhD, and it was during the time COVID happened. So I was like kind of the first batch to graduate online during the COVID period. So yeah, what happened was I had just finished my thesis and Italy was about to be locked down. So I didn't want to stay there while it was locked down. So I moved to Germany, and then because I had like a bit of some, how do you call it, support, emotional support, friends and stuff in Germany. So I moved there instead, since I was already almost done with my thesis. Yeah, so I moved there, finished online from there, and then started looking for the doctoral opportunities from there. Yeah.
Wow, that's good. So what then motivated you to study in Czech too?
It was really about the opportunity that came. So I sent out a couple of applications for PhD studies. At the time, most schools weren't accepting because it was during COVID. So like most schools didn't have like research funding for PhDs. They had put them on hold actually because they didn't know what the situation was going to be like. Yeah. So I looked up like the few schools that had opportunities, and I found this school. And no, a friend actually pointed me to the school. So I found it, and I looked at the topics, the PhD topics they had to see if anything suited me. So I found one topic. I emailed the professor about it, like sent him my CV. I emailed him about it. He seemed to be interested in what I'd done for my master's thesis and what I wanted to do with him. So, he asked me to apply online and send him an email confirmation when I applied. I did that, and I think 2 months or so after, I was supposed to come for an interview here. Yeah, but in Prague. In Prague. But during my application, I added 2 reference recommendation letters from my professors back in Italy. So he just had a look at it, and he was like, based on those reference letters, I might not have to come for the interview. So they were evaluated. Yeah, based on it. So I didn't come to Czech Republic or Prague. prior to
For the
like coming,
interview.
for the interview. I just had admission, and that was the first time I came here.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess you seems to be, what do you call it, maybe a extremely brilliant person, because you never went through the interview process and other stuff, so you skipped that because you had a lot of recommendation from your professors here.
Yeah.
That's good. So in general, what motivated you to study abroad? Because I know that you did study your bachelor's in Ghana, and then I think in which field?
I did agribusiness management in Tech. Yeah.
So then what motivated you to study abroad actually?
I think I'd always had the how do you call it? I'd always wanted to study abroad, even for my bachelor's, but then at the time my parents didn't think I was like old enough to travel by myself and all that. So the kind of agreements they had with me was to do my bachelor's in Ghana. Then after I can go out abroad to do my master's. I just didn't know which country specifically I would want to go. So I just had a bit of coaching from one friend of mine who did his national service the same place I did mine.
Where?
At Kokobot, Ghana Kokobot.
Okay.
Yeah. So he had finished his national service and moved abroad. And he moved to Italy and did a dual master's. So he did a first year in Italy and second year in Germany.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So
I think I know that kind of program. When I was studying in Sweden, as part of my studies, I was studying in Sweden. I think I met a guy from Italy who was also like doing the dual master's program.
Yeah.
So he did 1 year in Italy and then 1 year in Sweden, I think in Uppsala University. So at that time, I was also studying in Swedish University of Agriculture. So that we did live belong to the same nation, so we did meet and we interacted. And because he was from Ghana, so the Ghanaian what do you call it, community, so we got acquainted with each other. Yeah. So how was the application process from Ghana to Italy? Is there a scholarship scheme or how was it?
So it's very. I mean, these days I don't know how it's done, because apparently a lot of things has changed. But during my time, the Italian embassy opens a period where students who get admissions into public schools in Italy would have to go there and then file some form of pre-registration into the schools. And the public schools in Italy are aware. So when they give you the admission, a section of the admission letter would ask you to go to the embassy and fill. It's called the pre-enrollment process. Pre-enrollment, yeah. You do the pre-enrollment at the embassy in Italy. And this process, I mean, it involves, I think, submitting your bachelor's thesis, bachelor's certificate and transcript, your high school transcripts, and certificate.
Date of birth or some tax or something?
No, you don't. So for that process, you don't add any tax declaration documents.
Oh, okay.
You just submit your transcripts and your certificate from high school and your first degree. If you are going for bachelor's, you submit just for the high school.
So is it a purpose is it a validation process or just?
Yeah, so it's a form of the embassy validating that the documents you submitted online are original or they're authentic.
Authentic, okay.
Yeah, but during this process, you need to translate all those documents into Italian language. So they have certified translators in Ghana. The embassy provides, I think every year they come out with a list of the certified translators that you can go to.
Oh, okay.
You translate them.
You cannot just randomly go to maybe Institute of Languages and then...
No. Okay. They have a few. I think there's one professor in, I don't know if he's a professor now, but he's a lecturer in Legon, who I did it with. He's at the Department of Languages. Yeah, I think Dr. Asunka or Professor Asunka. Yeah.
So after that process, what then?
So after you translate the process, you send it to the embassy. You make an appointment for pre-enrollment, and when everything is set, so after the pre-enrollment, when your documents are certified, you are asked to do an interview right after you submit your documents. A physical interview, but it's like a brief exchange of questions, a brief interaction with one of their consulars on like why you want to study in Italy, what's your motivation. It's just a couple of questions, like probably 5 questions. What your parents are doing and all that. So from there, if the embassy finishes your evaluation process, then they will contact you through VFS. I think they submit a list to VFS, and then VFS contacts you to come for this, to apply for a visa, a student visa.
Yeah. I think then the application process is is quite different from that of the Czech Republic, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know much about Czech Republic because I took a different route.
Yeah, and also for me it was also different. But recently, I think there's involvement of some VFX. But before, there was nothing related to VFX when I was in my application process, so it was not entirely different from that my time and also now.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So then, after that, you don't get any because someone was telling me that there's some kind of scholarship scheme with Italy.
Yes, so that's different. So when you submit everything for the visa, it's not automatic that you're going to get a visa. You could still be refused even
after the entire interview and evaluations.
Yeah, even after the evaluation, if the embassy submits your name to VFS, it's not automatic that you're going to get a visa. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, after that process, there's also the scholarship application for every region, depending on the region you are going to in Italy. Because Italy operates the federal government system. So depending on the region you are going, you would look online for their scholarship application process, the regional scholarship. And then I think that's when the tax documents come in. So you provide tax documents of your parents, tax declaration documents from your parents. And if they have any assets or stuff, you do an affidavit. But some regions do not require the affidavit. So it depends on the region you are going to. My region, they didn't require an affidavit. So you submit those to the embassy, and the embassy has to certify those ones too for you. So if you do not get a certification from the embassy, you are not going to get a scholarship when you get to Italy. And every region has a deadline for their scholarship. So if you do not make it by the deadline, you also do not get a scholarship.
So this involves thorough research, because it means you need to know the region you're going, you need to know when the deadline for the application, you need to know the
documents you're
supposed to submit.
Yeah.
Wow.
In my case, I did not get a scholarship. That's why I'm explaining, because it happens that it could happen that you get the documents after the deadline, and then even when you get into the country, the office is still not going to accept it. So yeah, some friends of mine got it, but I did not get it. So yeah.
Okay, so let's come to Czech. So I think you've lived in Czech for the past 3 years.
Almost 3 years. Yeah.
Okay, exactly. What has been let me say, culture shock or things that you have said that is on you, like you saw when you came, because of culture difference, it became like it was unusual to you? Some culture shocks?
In Czech Republic, I think mine, I've had it a bit easy here because I transitioned from different European countries
too.
Also, I had experiences from different countries before coming here.
Yeah.
So most of my culture shock probably were in Italy. But here the only thing is probably the adamancy of people, in public. People would literally see 2 people fighting, or you could literally be bleeding on the street and no one cares.
No one cares.
Yeah, so that's one interesting thing.
Yeah, it's quite. And then I'm sure you have neighbors you've not been speaking to them before. Someday you only
just
say hi.
Hi and hello when you pass by.
Yeah, so.
But it has its good sides and bad sides also. I feel you're free to do whatever you want. It's almost as if for someone like me, when I moved here, I didn't know anyone here, not even the Ghanaian. I didn't know. I only had a friend who referred me to a friend here.
Okay.
So it was a mutual friend of we shared a mutual friend. So he met me and then, showed me around a little bit. But I didn't know anyone. So I felt like I was living in like a vacuum. Like you don't know anyone around you. You are free to do whatever you want. So that's a bit of the advantage, and no one cares about what you do. So
yeah, but at least it's a free society.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and besides, unlike in Ghana where you have like because you belong to a society, everybody sees you as a son, and then also as a husband or as a wife, so whatever single thing you do, there's a check and balances on you. I see. Okay. So what has been has studying abroad changed your perspective about a lot of things back home or something?
A lot. I'm really glad I moved to study abroad because one, the mode of teaching is different. Even the goal of teaching is different. That's what I've realized with degree. Like when I did my masters there, I realized the teachers were more concerned about the classroom sessions than the exam. We would literally have exams and they would leave us to ourselves. Because to them, their work was what they did during the semester. And the exam is only a proof of what they've taught you. But then if the lecturer realizes that during the course of the semester, students were participating in class, the exchange of
during like discussions.
Exchange of discussions during the class sessions were really fluid. Then at the end, like they don't really care about the exam. It's just a formality. So it was really interesting, that kind of perspective.
One of the things I do remember is that during my university days, my last university days in Ghana, one of my lecturers did study in Germany. So he was teaching us, and then during his exam session, he does interviews. He calls you one-to-one. So it was strange to all of us until I moved to Czech. During my studies, I realized that it was just normal here. Oral exams is just normal. It's not something strange, Yeah. So, I know that in the doctoral studies, you are actually studying specifically in some kind of field, or you have topics. Is there any interesting topic that you are dealing with, and even if you're on a project?
So my main study is under like conservation and exploitation of natural resources. So that's the broad study, but then my topic under this study is I'm looking at the different soil treatments, like different soil management practices and their effect on the water balances in the soil, but mostly the topsoil. So that's what I've been looking at, and currently I'm working on different tillage systems. I'm looking at the impact of different tillage systems on soil hydrophysical properties like bulk density, saturated and near saturated hydraulic conductivity. I look at soil organic matter, volumetric water content. Like it depends on which study I'm on and which soil property I want to use in that study, but then the analysis of all these properties are done.
So that is because from what you've just described, it has to do more of lab work
and field work. So
because I know in the field, I don't know which department, I don't know, soil science or something like that.
I'm with Department of Water Resources.
So definitely most of things will be either on the field or mostly like either lab or field. You collect, some samples that you need to deal with it in the lab. I remember when I was also studying. For me, I was in the Department of Soil Chemistry, so that was what basically I was actually doing. And it involved a lot of work at the lab, and just something else.
In the first few years, I'm nearing the end of my third year now, but most of the lab and field works are done in the first 2 years. So if you're able to gather this information in the first 2 years, then your third and final year is basically you analyzing the data and then trying to produce some publications out of your data.
So let's look at it. So far, living in Prague, you are working full time as well as studying. how are you able to balance such a relationship? Because I know reading a lot, writing, expecting what do you call it, publishers, and also expecting like what do you call people to look at your work and then give you some feedback. Yeah. So how are you able to manage this studying as well as working full time? I know it's kind of stressful, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's more about knowing when to do it, like planning your time well and knowing when to do your research and what you have to do on the research. I mean, that's what works for me. At least and the other thing is I had most of my data within my first 2 years. So what I do mostly on my research now is to try and write some publications and conference publications, article publications, like manuscript writing and stuff. So that's what I'm kind of doing right now. I still have some works to do, like in the lab and on the field, but like most of them are done.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to someone who is considering studying abroad or who is considering moving to Czech Republic?
It's always it's a different environment. It's going to teach you a lot of things that you are probably unaware of. So I think that saying that like traveling alone is like the university of life. Like, so outside whatever you've grown up knowing, you're going to know a lot more. I mean, you're going to know English is not the only language in the world, for instance. Because I mean, I think more than 90% of Europe does not speak English. So you're going to know something like that's one thing you're going to know, that you grew up thinking English is like the only language everyone should know, but it's not as prioritized here as you think it would be.
Yeah. But traveling actually is an eye-opener. It does help you a lot. You learn a lot from traveling, from culture, from almost every single thing. It also broadens your worldview. How you see the world, when you travel a lot, you see it in a different perspective. I used to see a lot of things. I used to understand that, like to see things in a different way. But at the moment, your horizon is quite broadened, and then you see a lot of things, and they don't marvel or they don't surprise you anymore. Yeah. I see. So, what do you think about? I don't know. This is a random question. About relationship in Czech or Czech women. Have you tried one?
No.
Okay. So you're just busy with work and studies.
Just busy with my research and all of that.
Okay, so girls, this guy is still single. So if you are looking for a single guy, he's available. Okay, so if there are some people that you would like to say shout out to, like back home as well as, or maybe here or in other countries.
I barely have friends these days, but I think my parents.
Okay.
They are my biggest fans. So.
Okay.
Hi to my parents back home and my siblings back home.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Mr. David.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Okay, guys. Thank you for staying with us, and please do like and subscribe to our channel. Bye.